The first thing that felt wrong was the basement door. The second thing was the footprints. But neither of those things scared me as much as what happened at 1:13 in the morning. Because that's when I realized someone was inside the house. And it wasn't the family. This happened during the winter of 2021. At the time, I was 19 years old and babysat regularly while attending community college. Most jobs came through referrals. Friends, neighbors, parents who knew other parents. Pretty normal. One Friday evening, however, I accepted a job from a family I'd never met before. A friend of a friend needed a sitter at the last minute. The pay was good. The house was located in a nice neighborhood outside Indianapolis. Everything seemed fine. The family had 2 children, a 7-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. Both were polite, easygoing, no problems at all. The parents seemed nice too. They explained bedtime routines, emergency numbers, house rules, normal stuff. Around 7 p.m. they left for a holiday party. And for the next several hours, everything went smoothly. The kids watched movies, ate snacks, played games, nothing unusual. Around 9 p.m., I put them to bed. The process went surprisingly well. No arguments, no complaints. Within half an hour, both kids were asleep. The house became quiet, very quiet. I settled into the living room with my phone and some homework. The only sounds came from the heater occasionally turning on. Outside, snow had started falling. The neighborhood looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. Around 10:45 p.m., I heard a noise, a dull thump, somewhere downstairs. At first, I assumed it came from the furnace. Older houses make noises. No big deal. Then it happened again. Thump. This time it sounded closer, almost like something had fallen over. I paused my music and listened. Silence. After a minute, I shrugged it off. Probably nothing. Then I noticed the basement door. The door sat near the kitchen, and I was almost positive it had been closed earlier. Now it stood slightly open. Only an inch or two, but enough to notice. Immediately I felt uncomfortable. Not terrified, just uneasy. The kind of feeling you get when something doesn't look the way it's supposed to. I walked over and pushed the door closed, then returned to the couch. 20 minutes later, the basement door was open again. My stomach dropped, because I knew I hadn't imagined it. I knew I closed it, completely, yet somehow it had reopened. I walked over, looked down the dark staircase, and felt every instinct tell me not to go down there. The basement lights were off. Nothing moved. Nothing made noise. Still, I didn't like it. Not one bit. So I closed the door again, this time locking it. Midnight arrived. Then 12:30. The parents texted saying they'd be home around 2 a.m. Everything seemed normal again, at least until I went into the kitchen for a drink. That's when I saw the footprints, wet footprints, on the tile floor, leading away from the basement door. I froze, because snow was falling outside, and those footprints definitely hadn't been there earlier. For several seconds I simply stared, trying to convince myself there was a logical explanation. The kids? Impossible. They were asleep. Me? Wrong shoe size. Wrong direction. The footprints continued into the laundry room, then disappeared. Just vanished. At that point, genuine fear started replacing doubt. I called the father immediately. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. Then I called 911. While waiting for officers, I locked myself in the upstairs hallway near the children's bedrooms. I remember sitting there listening, heart pounding, phone in my hand, trying to stay calm. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming from downstairs. The sound moved through the kitchen, then the living room, then stopped, directly beneath me. I could barely breathe. Every sound felt amplified. Every second felt longer than the last. Then I heard something else. The basement door, opening. A few moments later, police arrived. The sound of sirens outside felt like the greatest relief of my life. Officers entered the home immediately, conducted a search, checked every room, every closet, every hallway. Eventually they found him, a man hiding inside a utility area connected to the basement. According to investigators, he had entered through an old exterior access door that no longer locked properly. The basement provided shelter from the weather, and apparently he'd been using it intermittently for weeks, possibly months, without the family realizing it. The discovery shocked everyone, especially the homeowners. But what terrified me most came later. Police recovered a backpack, food, blankets, and a notebook. Inside were entries describing the family's routines, arrival times, departure times, schedules, observations, weeks of observations, including notes about babysitters. One entry described me, the clothes I wore, the time I arrived, the rooms I entered, everything. The realization made me physically sick, because while I thought I was alone in that house, someone had been watching me the entire evening, from below, waiting, listening, observing. I never babysat for strangers again, and even now, years later, I still check basement doors whenever I enter an unfamiliar house. Because sometimes, the danger isn't outside trying to get in. Sometimes, it's already inside. The first time she mentioned him, I thought she had an imaginary friend. The second time I laughed. By the third time, I stopped laughing, because the little girl wasn't describing a friend. She was describing a man she insisted lived upstairs. The problem was, nobody lived upstairs. This happened in 2020. At the time, I was 21 and babysitting regularly while attending college in North Carolina. Most of the families I worked for were repeat clients. Families I trusted. Families who trusted me. One of those families had a 6-year-old daughter named Emma. Emma was polite, smart, and extremely talkative. The kind of kid who could hold a conversation for hours. I had babysat her multiple times before. Never any problems. Never anything strange. Until one Saturday night. The parents left around 6 p.m. Dinner went smoothly. We watched a movie. Played board games. Everything felt normal. Around 8 p.m., Emma suddenly asked me something, completely out of nowhere. Do you think he's awake tonight? I remember looking up from my phone, confused. I asked who she meant. Emma shrugged, then answered, the man upstairs. I laughed immediately. The house only had one upstairs bedroom, a guest room. Nobody lived there. I assumed she was talking about an imaginary friend. Kids do that. No big deal. So I played along. I asked what the man looked like. Emma answered without hesitation. Tall. Gray jacket. He doesn't smile. The description felt oddly specific. Still, kids have vivid imaginations. I didn't think much about it, at least not then. Around 9 p.m., I put Emma to bed. She brushed her teeth, changed into pajamas. Everything normal. As I tucked her in, she asked another question. Will you close my door tonight? I asked why. Emma looked toward the hallway, then quietly said, so he doesn't watch me. The comment sent a small chill down my spine. Not because it sounded supernatural, because it sounded genuine. Like she actually believed it. Still, I reassured her, closed the door, turned on a nightlight, and headed downstairs. For the next hour, everything remained quiet. Then around 10:15 p.m., I heard footsteps upstairs. Not loud, not dramatic, just slow creaking sounds. I immediately assumed Emma was out of bed, maybe using the bathroom, maybe getting water. Nothing unusual. I walked upstairs to check. The hallway was empty. Emma's bedroom door remained closed. The guest room remained closed. Everything looked normal. I opened Emma's door slightly. She was asleep, or appeared to be, so I returned downstairs. The moment I sat down, the footsteps started again. This time they sounded heavier, slower, almost deliberate. My stomach tightened, because Emma couldn't possibly be making that much noise. Not from bed. I muted the television, listened. The sounds continued. One step, pause. Another step, pause. Back and forth across the second floor. Eventually I grabbed my phone and headed upstairs again, this time determined to figure out what was causing it. The hallway sat empty, completely empty. No movement, no sounds, nothing. Then I noticed something strange. The guest room door stood open. I was almost positive it had been closed earlier. The room itself looked normal. Unused furniture. Storage boxes. Nothing unusual. Then I saw the rocking chair. It was moving. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just gently rocking. Back and forth. Back and forth. I froze. For several seconds, I simply stared, trying to convince myself there was a logical explanation. Air conditioning. Draft. Anything. Then I noticed something else. A window. Partially open. Relieved, I closed it immediately. Mystery solved. Or so I thought. Around 11 p.m., Emma suddenly appeared downstairs. The sight startled me. She stood at the bottom of the staircase, rubbing her eyes, half asleep. I asked what was wrong. Emma looked toward the second floor, then said, "He's walking around again." Every hair on my arm stood up. I asked who, even though I already knew. "The man upstairs." Her answer came instantly, like she didn't need to think about it. I carried her back to bed, trying not to show how uncomfortable I felt. Before falling asleep again, she said one final thing, something I still remember perfectly. "He knows you're here tonight." That sentence genuinely unsettled me, because of the way she said it. Calm, matter of fact, like she was telling me the weather. Midnight arrived, then 12:30. The house became completely silent. For a while. Then I heard a door close upstairs. Hard. Loud enough to echo. I immediately stood up, heart racing, and headed toward the staircase. Halfway up, I stopped, because another sound followed. Footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Moving across the second floor. The sounds continued for several seconds, then stopped, directly outside the guest room. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the parents, ready to call police if necessary. Then I forced myself upstairs. The hallway looked empty. The guest room door stood open. Again, I stepped inside, turned on the light, and immediately felt relief. The room was empty, completely empty. Then I noticed something near the closet, a narrow access panel, partially open. The sight instantly caught my attention, because I had never seen it before. Curious, I pulled it open completely. Behind it sat a small storage crawl space extending beneath part of the roof. Old insulation, boxes, dust, nothing unusual, at first. Then my flashlight illuminated something else. A blanket. My stomach dropped immediately, because blankets don't randomly appear inside crawl spaces. I climbed closer, and found more. Food wrappers, water bottles, flashlights, clothing. Someone had clearly been spending time there. A lot of time. I backed out immediately and called 911. Police arrived within minutes. The search that followed revealed something horrifying. A man had been secretly living inside portions of the home's attic and crawl space for weeks, possibly longer. According to investigators, he entered through a damaged exterior access point and remained hidden during the day, moving around primarily at night. The noises, the footsteps, the doors, everything suddenly made sense. But the detail that still bothers me happened afterward. During interviews, investigators asked Emma whether she'd ever seen the man directly. Her answer shocked everyone. She said, "Of course." Then she added, "He told me not to tell anybody." The room reportedly went completely silent, because Emma wasn't describing imagination anymore. She was describing conversations, real conversations. The man had apparently spoken to her on multiple occasions, usually when she played upstairs, usually when adults weren't nearby. That realization terrified me far more than the attic, because while everyone assumed Emma had an imaginary friend, she had actually been trying to tell the truth. The adults just weren't listening. I never babysat in that house again. Not because I blamed the family, because every time I remembered Emma saying, "The man upstairs," I realized something chilling. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't imagining anything. She was warning us. The first motion alert came at 11:07 p.m. I ignored it. The second came 3 minutes later. I ignored that one too. By the third alert, I opened the security app and saw someone standing inside the house. The problem was, I was supposed to be the only person awake. This happened in 2022. At the time, I was 23 and babysitting regularly while finishing my final year of college in Colorado. One of my repeat clients lived in a large house outside Denver. Nice neighborhood, quiet street, 2 children, a 9-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. I'd worked for them several times before, never had a single issue. The parents trusted me. I trusted them. Everything about the job felt routine, which is probably why I wasn't prepared for what happened. The parents left around 6:30 p.m. The evening started normally. We ordered pizza, played video games, watched a movie, nothing unusual. Around 9 p.m., I got both kids into bed. The boy went down easily. The younger girl needed a story first. Pretty standard babysitting stuff. By 10 p.m., the house was finally quiet. The parents had recently installed a home security system. Door sensors, outdoor cameras, motion detectors. The father briefly explained how it worked before leaving, mostly in case an alarm accidentally triggered. I didn't think much about it until my phone buzzed. 11:07 p.m. Motion detected. Interior hallway camera. I glanced at the notification and immediately assumed one of the kids had gotten out of bed. No big deal. I didn't even open the footage. Kids wander around at night all the time. Then another alert arrived. 11:10 p.m. Motion detected. Second floor hallway. Now I was slightly annoyed. I figured one of the children was probably sneaking around. Maybe looking for snacks. Maybe trying to stay awake. Whatever. I opened the security app and felt my stomach drop. The hallway appeared empty. No child. No movement. Nothing. The motion event had already ended. I shrugged it off. Technology isn't perfect. False alerts happen. Then came the third notification. 11:14 p.m. Motion detected. Playroom camera. This time I watched the recording immediately. And that's when everything changed. The video showed someone entering the playroom. Not clearly. Not enough to identify them. Just a dark figure moving through the doorway. The clip lasted only a few seconds. Then ended. My first thought was obvious. An intruder. My second thought was somehow worse. The person was already inside. I immediately checked the children's rooms. Both asleep. Both exactly where they should have been. Nothing unusual. Nothing disturbed. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. So I locked every door, checked every window, and called the father. No answer. The parents were attending a wedding reception. Loud music. Large crowd. Not surprising. Still frustrating. A few minutes later, another alert appeared. 11:26 p.m. Basement camera. The basement. My stomach tightened instantly. Because nobody should have been down there. Nobody. I opened the footage. The screen loaded. And there he was. A man. Only visible for a second. Standing near the rear of the basement. Partially hidden by darkness. Watching the camera. The clip ended. I remember feeling physically cold. Because now there was no doubt. Somebody was inside the house. I called 911 immediately. The dispatcher instructed me to gather the children and lock ourselves inside a bedroom. Which is exactly what I did. Waking the kids without scaring them was difficult. The older boy immediately knew something was wrong. The younger girl started crying. I told them there was a problem with the alarm system. Nothing more. Then we waited. The longest 15 minutes of my life. Every sound felt amplified. Every creak made me jump. Every shadow looked suspicious. I sat against the bedroom door holding my phone. Listening. Waiting for police. Then I heard footsteps. Downstairs. Slow. Measured. Moving through the house. The sound stopped. Then started again. Closer this time. The children heard it too. I could tell by their expressions. Neither said anything. Neither needed to. Then came a noise directly outside the bedroom. A doorknob. Turning. My heart felt like it stopped. The knob moved once. Twice. Then stopped. Several seconds passed. Silence. Then footsteps moved away. A minute later, police arrived. The relief I felt was overwhelming. Officers searched the house immediately. Room by room. Floor by floor. At first, they found nothing. Then one officer discovered an access door inside a storage area connected to the basement. Behind it sat a narrow maintenance space running beneath portions of the home. And inside that space, they found evidence someone had been staying there. Blankets, food, water, flashlights, phone chargers, personal belongings. Whoever had been hiding there clearly knew the house, and had apparently been using the area for some time. The suspect escaped before officers located him, but investigators eventually pieced together what happened. According to police, the man had likely entered through a damaged exterior access point weeks earlier, possibly longer, using hidden areas of the house to avoid detection, emerging only when residents were asleep or away. The discovery horrified everyone, especially the homeowners. But the worst detail came later. Security footage recovered from previous weeks showed something disturbing. The man had appeared multiple times before. Hallways, basement rooms, storage areas, always briefly, always at night, always just outside normal living spaces. Nobody noticed because nobody was actively reviewing the recordings. Then investigators showed me one final clip. A clip recorded 3 nights before the incident. The video showed the man standing outside the children's bedrooms, motionless, watching, for nearly 2 minutes. That image stayed with me for months, because suddenly the situation wasn't just about an intruder. It was about how long he'd been there, how much he'd seen, how close he'd been. I stopped babysitting for almost a year afterward, not because I didn't enjoy it anymore, because I couldn't stop imagining hidden spaces, attics, basements, storage rooms, places people assume are empty. Sometimes parents ask me what scared me most about that night. The answer isn't the security footage, or the footsteps, or even the doorknob turning outside the bedroom. The scariest part was learning the alerts hadn't started that night. The system logs showed similar motion notifications dating back nearly 3 weeks. Everyone had assumed they were false alarms. They weren't. Someone had been moving through the house the entire time, and nobody realized it.